Hey everyone, it's Jack. Last week we talked about the best winner storylines, so this week it only makes sense to talk about the worst. Of course, I want to preface the video by saying this does not mean they're a bad winner in general, it just means that the editors and the story producers just didn't tell the best story that I thought they could. I'm probably going to end up repeating myself a lot in this video because when I was doing research and getting clips for the videos, a lot of the time I could see a good storyline in there, but for one reason or another, it just wasn't told the way that it should be told. So anyone mentioned in this video, I think they're a good winner and I'm happy that they won. Just along the lines of the show itself, there could have been more done and that's why I consider them the worst. Definitely still not bad though. I found a pattern for at least 4 of the winners' storylines that were brought up a lot in the community post that I want to talk about today, and it all has to do with victims of circumstance. The circumstances being things on production side. I think we should start off with one of the most commonly brought up storylines, that being Sasha Velour's. Sasha Velour, even from the start, I think really exuded winner energy, and especially when you look at her in a vacuum, yeah, that is a winner right there. The only issue is that it was season 9 with one of the best casts ever, including Shea Coulee. Shea and Sasha had a great relationship during the season, and they ended up winning 2 challenges together, and those were both of Sasha's wins. However, Shea Coulee was able to net 2 more solo wins, making her the frontrunner of the season. Up to that point, there were performances at the finale, but it mostly felt like a reunion and just like a way to interview each of the top 3. So Sasha making it to the end, it made sense. We got to learn a lot about her, but when someone who has 4 wins and dominated so much of the competition is still there, it's hard to justify anyone else winning. But because the cast was so strong, they decided to switch it up and do a top 4. And at the same time, they wanted to switch the format from a reunion interview style to a lip sync for the crown format. So now the deciding factor for the season could be who wins a lip sync, and that's how we got Sasha versus Shea. I mean, you've seen this moment. In the bottom of the 9th, I think that's a baseball reference, Sasha was able to pull out a win with a defining performance for the show. And the whiplash that viewers expected with seeing Shea Coulee eliminated at the end, what we expected with past finales, and just this new format in general, it left people shocked, some people a little bitter, and it probably made the producers rethink how they're gonna tell storylines going forward, and I'll talk about that in just a second. In a vacuum, we got so much good content from Sasha this season, and the finale is just like a way to solidify her win. People just always compare it to Shea's run as well, and it's kind of hard not to because Shea did so good in the season as well. The showrunners just put a lot more eggs in the Shea's basket, so when she loses at the end, they lose all those eggs. So much emphasis on Shea is pulled out from under them, and it leaves Sasha with not as much at the end. So going forward, as they kept doing lip sync for the crown, they started to craft each of the top 4 or top 5 storylines in a way where any of them could take it and it could be relatively satisfying. And I want to know what everyone thinks in the comments below, because I think a lot of the time it does lead to a satisfying win, but in light of trying to give everyone a pseudo winner's edit, I feel like we miss out on a lot of diverse content. Also, if you guys like my content, please consider subscribing. It really helps out the channel. Turn on post notifications too, because the sooner you're here, the sooner I can interact with you, and I love doing that. I'll briefly mention Jaida Essence Hall here as well. She's someone that I've done a full video on and why she won the show, but I still think that story could have been told so much better. Heidi said on Joseph Shepard's new show, which you guys should go watch by the way, that before the disqualification of Sherry, it was between Gigi and Sherry and their whole rivalry. I also have a video on that too. So for a lot of the filming process, Jaida was sidelined. We got to see her be an amazing, talented queen. But when it came to a lot of life content, we didn't get anything until the makeover episode, which was so far into the season. The average person who watches the show enjoys hearing more about the queen's lives because it helps them relate to the queen as a person, and we get a 3-dimensional look to realize that they are a real person. That's why a lot of the time before a queen is about to get eliminated, we learn more about their life. It happens in basically every reality show, and it's just a way to play with your feelings. So when the winner of the season doesn't get much backstory until the 9th or 10th episode, you know that their storyline is just not being told the best. With this edit, it makes me think that they didn't record enough Jaida content in general, which is criminal, and due to the re-edit of the season, everyone got a little bump up of screen time because they had to cut out a finalist. So prior to the re-edit, I don't know how much Jaida was in there, but I already know that it wasn't enough. I'm glad that they were able to address this on All-Star 7, and Jaida Jaida has become one of the fan favorites of the show, because that's a title that she should have had since season 12. Speaking of controversial queens causing the production of the season and the winner to get thrown out of whack, we have Ketamine on Down Under 1, which is another very infamous one. Out of every potential storyline lurking in the shadows, I feel like Kita's was the most obvious. She was one of 3 Kiwi queens who all worked at the same club. Her best friend was on the season and got eliminated early, and by the end she is the only Kiwi queen standing. There could have been a whole storyline about her feeling like an underdog or feeling like she needs to rep her entire country. Watching 2 of her really good friends get eliminated, one by her own hand, there's really so much that they could have done, but instead they decided to focus on Scarlett Adams especially, and then also Karen from Finance and Art Simone a little bit. Art was also caught in the crossfire of production and was brought back. It's a whole messy situation. While the other 2 have a lot of controversy surrounding them, I don't want to get into it in this video, but a common theme with production is that they put too many eggs in a basket that is just going to break, and break those baskets did, leaving Kita as the most viable option and having a lot of people say that she won by default. In my eyes, I think in the competition, Kita did more than enough to justify a win, and she was able to talk about herself and her past pretty early on into the season, which was great. And in the finale, it seemed like Rue and Michelle really enjoyed her presence. So where Kita's storyline was fumbled is kind of like a combination of the last 2 winners. There wasn't a ton of content there because they were focusing on other queens like Jaida's storyline, and one of the other finalists on the season had more wins than her and just did better in the competition, like Sasha's storyline. Most people don't think that she is an undeserving winner by any means. They just look at the lineup of finalists and saw that Kita was the only option that they could really go with. And I think the comments like that undercut the accomplishments that Kita had in the competition. Rewatch the season with fresh eyes. I know it's a lot to ask for you to watch Down Under season 1 again, but Kita did have a lot of great moments in the season. I know Scarlett had some better moments competition wise, but after rewatching it for this video, I do think it was deserved in a lot of ways. And it could have definitely been justified if they focused more in on her being the only Kiwi queen left in the competition. And the final storyline that I want to talk about is Krystal Versace's on UK Series 3. This entire season's production was just messy all around. There was an injury that caused a surefire frontrunner to leave the competition super early, a double sachet, a double Shantae, there was a top 2 lip sync. All of these choices were being made for a reason, but especially with that double sachet, I think it was worthy of a double sachet, but like it was already a mess for so many different reasons, they just made it messier. Krystal's storyline was affected by this in a couple weird ways. She was able to get wins back to back in episodes 1 and 2, but after that, the competition really started to unravel, and she wasn't really caught in it, but they decided to focus on Ella and Kitty a lot more. A common theme among the Drag Race UK seasons is that people who do good early on end up winning in the end. It's happened with the Vivienne, Lawrence, Krystal, and Danny, and it's only recently been broken by the UK 5 winner. It's really weird how Drag Race UK tells their winners' storylines, or just the storylines of the top 3 in general. It just feels like each of the finalists does good in the competition for their period of time before moving on to the next queen to do good for their period of time. So Krystal did good early, Ella did good in the middle, and then Kitty picked it up late. On series 2, Lawrence did good early, and then Bimini did good late. A lot of the time, it's just how the performances break down. Those queens just go on a really long streak of doing great in these challenges. But for storytelling reasons, it's just not as strong because people naturally remember what is more recent to them. It's just much more fresh in their head to remember the wins of Ella and Kitty and forget what Krystal did early on to then be confused by Krystal winning in the end. What Krystal had going for her though is RuPaul loving her. I think Krystal was the first that RuPaul said was born to do drag, and I'm pretty sure that title is only held by Krystal, Georges, and Anitra, and Ru basically told that to another queen that we'll get to in a little bit. So while Krystal was struggling at points in the competition, Ru was constantly giving her the pick-me-up of saying that she was so good, she was born to do drag, except in the roast where she, did the opposite.
Now Ru has complimented me on being gorgeous and young and good at what I do.
Not anymore!
And I think that was their way of keeping Krystal in the minds of the viewers, and I just don't think that was very strong. The way that the challenges shook down, it seemed like all of the challenges that Krystal could really excel at just happened early. It was just the unfortunate circumstance of how the challenges happened, and the way that UK likes to tell their storylines that ended up with a weird edit for Krystal. I would be stupid not to mention how amazing she did in the finale, and I think that is another justification as to why she won. Her verse was my favorite, and I think she really dominated the top 3 lip sync, which often doesn't really really seem to matter, but it might have mattered here. People were saying Ella threw it at the end. Ella was having back problems, so she couldn't really lip sync her heart out, and that allowed for Krystal to give the best performance, which could have played into her crowning, but often the finale just doesn't add to that. The finale where they're not doing a lip sync tournament is often like runways. They only really take it into account when they want to justify something. So to justify Krystal's win, I think they took the finale into account, which should just be the standard, but for a lot of Drag Race fans, they're not used to that. So that's why a lot of people were unsatisfied with the win. I need to see Jaida and Krystal back on an all-winner season because I think both of them could have really interesting storylines and a lot to prove. So many people said this next winner, and it was always prefaced or followed up with a "don't get me wrong." And honestly, I gotta do it here too. Don't get me wrong, I love Kylie Sonique love, but yeah, that winner's storyline was very weird. I think they were trying to do another story of winning in the very end. I think the fall was an amazing moment, and that was basically their justification of the win, but that ultimately just didn't do it for a lot of people. It really felt like it was Raja's season to win. The entire season was basically about redemption in different ways, and Kylie definitely got that too, but not nearly as much as Raja. They both got challenge redemptions and also just performance redemptions because they both didn't do great in their first season, but on top of that, Raja also got a redemption of character because she was framed as a villain in her first season. Got a whole video on that. It's like my favorite video ever. For what they were going for on the season, Raja's wins just fit more into this winner's storyline. She redeemed herself with a design challenge where she was eliminated last time and was able to win another design challenge while also fitting into this whole new branding of her whole character change. If they wanted to do the same thing with Kylie, they should have given her the win for Snatch Game. I mean, her Snatch Game was phenomenal. That was the redemption she really needed, but instead they gave it to her for the acting challenge, which was kind of questionable to me. She just had stronger performances on the season than this challenge, and only giving her this one win, it just doesn't feel as satisfying, and that just builds up to a weird conclusion at the end. You could really see the struggle with who they wanted to choose in the end because I think all of the top 4 did a really great job, and even though Raja was closest to the theme of the season, any of them could have taken it. If they were able to just move a couple pieces around, Kylie winning at the end would make a lot of sense, and that fall into the recovery would seal the deal. She's another queen that I would love to see on all winners. Honestly, any of these queens would be a great choice. And finally, a winner I want to talk about that was a very hotly debated winner at the time, Violet Chachki. Like I said earlier with Krystal, there were only 3 queens that held the Born to Do Drag title that RuPaul gives out, but Ru was basically giving that title to Violet in the past. And as a winner performance-wise, we saw what she did on the show, on the runway. I think she did a great job. She just wasn't as experienced in the types of challenges that were on this season. Looking back on the season, there were only 3 individual challenges, and Violet was able to win 2 of them. The rest, outside of the makeover and dancing challenge, all lean towards comedy. And out of all the fashion queens, Violet definitely did the best. But going up against people like Katya, Kennedy, and Ginger Minj in comedy challenges, it was hard to really see Violet as the person who excelled the most on the season. But you watch the season back, and so many of the most impactful moments from the season came from Violet. She knew what she was good at, and she was able to get through the other challenges that she was just okay at. So her winning in the end with her track record and her performance over someone like Ginger, who was the debated other winner, I think that's totally fine, but where I get caught up is the storyline they were trying to throw on her. She started out as this confident, sorta bitchy fashion queen who kind of thought that she knew everything, and she basically ended the same way, which is totally fine, but halfway through the season, they tried to push this really sweet narrative on her. Also, once again, I want to give a shout out to Full Fat Videos because they talked about Violet in one of their other video essays and made a lot of really great points that I agreed with. It was a way to win some people over who may have not really been vibing with Violet, and I think it was a really nice sentiment, but it was the most tell-don't show that they've ever done, and it ultimately just led to this weird story because we were told that Violet was changing, but then in the last episode, Ginger and her got into a fight again, and they used a confessional of Ginger saying complaints that they've had since day 1 of Violet. So are they saying that she regressed? It just doesn't lead to a satisfying storyline. If this cast was on a regular season, I think RuPaul would be so much more vocal about how much she loved Violet. There is no doubt in my head that Ru would tell Violet that she was born to do drag. For all winners too, a cast of Sasha, Krystal, Violet, Jaida, and Kylie honestly goes kind of hard. And that goes to show that even if their winner's storyline wasn't told the best, it doesn't mean that they're a bad winner because you're still excited to see them. My choices today all boil down to the potential in the storylines that just wasn't there on the actual show. Honestly, the edit can make anyone into a winner. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, all the YouTuber stuff. Send some love to these queens in this video, and I'll see you guys soon with another video.